Welcome to the Johnny Dell. We are live. It is a weird Monday to say the least. We're going to break it all down. We're going to go over everything. Don't lose faith. We did not get the bye. We are going to be playing at Philadelphia, 4:30 Eastern time, 1:30 Bay Area time. Uh, man, we got head coaching vacancies that probably affect us. We got all kinds of stuff. Johnny, how are you doing?
I'm doing a little bit better than I was Saturday night. I was going through a lot of mourning with it. I wasn't ready to say goodbye to the season. And I know we play one more game. Okay, everybody, like people have been acting like I don't realize that we are in the playoffs. Because I said it felt like third and 17 ended the season. Because it felt like this was a team
Freaking Baker
you
Mayfield.
knew
Just let
well,
Baker play, man.
well, I mean, yeah, it's just like you knew that almost certainly the 49ers were gonna if they didn't win that game, we're gonna have to go on the road to Philadelphia. And that is a matchup that for me, I think is the worst matchup you can have in the playoffs for the 49ers outside of Seattle. Um, they're a team that wants to run the ball, is committed to running the ball. And we have been struggling with that really ever since Micah Williams went down. It's been a challenge. The only game outside of that where we didn't was against the Colts, and Philip Rivers was dicing us apart on those first couple drives. So it felt like, it just physically from a matchup standpoint, our linebackers with the state of our linebacking core, everything that going to Philly and with Trent Williams being hurt and Ricky Pearsall wasn't able to suit up for that game. Flying cause more inflammation if you're dealing with injuries. It just does the pressurization and everything. Like, yes, it's a pressurized cabin, but it's actually pressurized at like 6,000 feet. Um, so it's a rapid increase and then decrease as you're going. So it causes some inflammation to travel. And so if you're looking at Trent Williams and Ricky Pearsall and the different guys that are there, and also the news that Fred Warner was targeting coming back in the divisional round, it felt like if there was any team in the NFC that needed a bye in the first week of the playoffs more than anyone, it was the 49ers. That you felt like if you could get that bye, your chances increased threefold of actually making some noise in the playoffs. It feels like now you have the worst matchup that you really have. 49ers fans will not take over uh, Philly Stadium. Like that's not happening. That is one of the worst places for opposing fans to go, especially in the playoffs against a team with a great defense, much like Seattle. Vic Fangio has been one of the best defensive play callers and coaches for decades now. Against a team that really is committed to and wants to run the ball. And this just feels like a really bad matchup. It feels like a similar matchup of what we had against Seattle. And now you're doing this in back-to-back weeks with a banged up team, and you've got to travel. So that third and 17 felt like for me, that's where I was just mentally. Um, I'm kind of coming out of that a little bit. I watched the film. I didn't feel nearly as, the 49ers had no chance against the Seahawks after watching that film. Um, too many self-inflicted wounds, and I felt like this was a game plan that was a clear departure from week one, and I don't know if that was because of Brock getting injured against Seattle with that turf toe at the very beginning of the year, and then trying to protect him from that front, and seeing that they didn't do enough to do that in week one, and trying to make that adjustment. And what that ended up causing, especially when you don't have a Ricky Pearsall out there, is just there was not nearly enough space created, and they were ending up just not enough influence against that defense. They were playing zones, and I mean, credit to Seattle's defense. That is a very, very good defense. I still think they're the second best defense in the league. I think Houston really still is the better defense,
Yeah.
but they are really good. I mean, credit to some of their guys. There were some plays. There was one play in particular, and I'll show it on my breakdown video when it releases. Brock tried to look off one of their zone defenders. I mean, he drops back, he looks hard to the right. The guy just stands there and is waiting for Brock to then move his eyes back to the middle of the field, and then he jumps a basic route over the middle where we were trying to go with the ball. And it's like, that's just tip your cap to the defense. That dude is staying disciplined. He's not getting moved, and he's got a bead on what the 49ers are trying to run against them. And that goes to, that's not a player on the field issue, from our standpoint. That's one, good defense by them. Two, you went to the well too many times trying to high low the middle of the field against them. And that was what was going on there. So, when I looked at this, I saw game plan was not good enough. Was not happy with the game plan. Brock missed some opportunities. Christian McCaffrey had some mistakes. Obviously, the one big one on bouncing off his hands for the interception. Offensive line was far too subpar. And it's one thing when you just get beat. It's another thing when you just miss assignments. Receivers running poor routes, running poor depth of routes, missing their assignment, going and blocking the wrong guy. I mean, there was one play, and I showed it on my X, where Kittle is literally turning and yelling at Demarcus Robinson after a play because he was supposed to go block Nick Emanwari and went and blocked the corner, Reek Woolen. And Juwan Jennings is going to block Reek Woolen. Nobody blocks Emanwari. You should have an 8-9 yard gain on a rush because the offensive line blocks everything great. Kittle kicks his guy out, but nobody accounts for Emanwari, and it's like a 2-3 yard gain. And you end up failing to convert on that third down, because the next play we ran after that was where we tried the gadget play. We were trying the fake reverse flea flicker, and you get like 8 yards, and then Purdy gets sacked on third down. And so you end up kicking a field goal, or it wasn't sacked on third down. He was trying to escape, and they got him like on a shoestring. You don't get that first down. And so, watching all of that stuff, it was frustrating. But I didn't feel like, okay, the 49ers never had. I felt like watching the game that they really never had a shot. Watching the film, I was like, they had opportunities. There was meat left on the bone. You had opportunities to put up more than 3 points, and you had opportunities to hold Seattle to fewer than what they scored, but didn't capitalize.
Yeah, overall, I agree with that sense of why do I not think we have a chance here? Like, it just felt that way. Didn't pass the eye test. We did not pass the eye test, and was just very, very crazy. One of those games where I was telling some of my friends who were texting me, like, dude, what's going on? And I said, I think sometimes you completely lay an egg, and sometimes it's in bad spots. I remember when Steve Young won the Super Bowl, they lost, it was like 30-0 the whole game. We only scored a touchdown at the end of the game and went for two and scored eight. And the Eagles beat us 40-8. And I
Yeah,
remember
you're
watching
okay.
that
So
game.
you're talking about during the '94 season. It started to sound like you were talking about in the Super Bowl.
No, no.
Yeah, I mean,
Where we
the
did
Philly
win,
loss. Yeah, the
it was
Philly
just
loss is
random.
one of those games that I think we go back to every single year when we have a really bad loss. You know, it's like, oh my gosh, this team is doomed, and you go, yeah, you know what? Everybody wrote us off in against Philly in '94. And it's one of those like moments where everybody talks about it, about how it's not remembered or not talked about so much that it actually is
Is
talked
yeah.
about all the time. People forget the Philly game in '94, and it's like, actually every time we have a rough loss. I remember 2013 when we got blown out by the Seahawks in Seattle against the Legion of Boom. It was Vernon Davis got that horrible concussion from Cam Chancellor.
Cam
It was like
Chancellor.
42-19, something like that. And what was the talk? I remember the talk coming out for that one. We said the same thing, Philly in '94.
Yeah.
I remember it was 2023 when we lost the Browns or the Bengals. I think it was one of those losses. We were saying the same thing, and it was, remember '94, we
It was the
lost to
Browns.
Philly.
It was the Browns
Um,
because we beat the Bengals.
That comes up all the time. It's kind of like when people say, Brock is really underrated as a runner, but then like every coach that they talk to in the pressers will say this is a guy that can really do stuff with his legs. Like every game, the announcers talk about how Brock is underrated as with his legs. The head coaches he's playing against talk about what he can do with his legs. Like everybody talks about how he's underrated, and you go, well, if everybody's saying he's underrated, then it's really he is rated. We're just the conversation is about how he isn't, and it's kind of one of those odd conversations, and I think the Philly one is like that. But it's a game where I think the hard part is knowing that there's no regular season games after this to try and get right. You've got one shot here against Philadelphia, and that's what I think is disturbing for 49ers fans.
So Brock did have some blood at the end of the game, his finger, but Cayman Island says, I'm proud of Brock for not completely breaking down.
Well, I mean, okay. Let's change the tone of that a little. Not completely breaking down. I mean, it makes it sound like he was breaking down. I think he's saying for not completely breaking down. Like most quarterbacks against the pressure that he was getting and that front would have broken down. I mean, that's just a fact. And by the end of the game, he had corrected some of the misses early in the game, and the team was driving and they were still in a position to make it a 3-point game there at the end. The 3rd and 17 was a backbreaker. That interception was a backbreaker, and um, you know, I, I've had people say, yeah, the defense wasn't at fault here. They held Seattle to so many points. And I go, okay, yes and no, because here's the problem with the defense. Seattle missed 2 very makeable field goals. That it was like the bizarro Jake Moody game. Like week 1 felt like we should have beat Seattle by double digits and it shouldn't have been close. This felt like the opposite of that, and that was because our kicker missed field goals. This game felt like we should have lost by a wider margin, but their kicker missed some field goals. The problem was after that interception, the Seahawks got the ball at their own 4-yard line, and they drove it all the way down to inside the 25. And so like when there was 6 minutes left in the game and it was a 10-point game, the defense simply could not stop the run in those moments, and they couldn't get off the field. And so, yeah, they didn't give up points on that drive because Seattle missed the field goal, but you allowed Seattle to drain off almost the entire amount of the clock, move the ball all the way across the field, and you never stood tall. And so, yes, you may have not given up points on that game, but that game you might as well have given like that. That's as good as giving up a score because you took away a possession from your own offense in doing that. Like that gave the offense no chance to do anything out of there. And Cayman's he's coming in clarifying it. Yeah. I am proud he did not start forcing things, and he didn't. He didn't force any throws in there. He was trying to stay patient, but there was just very little space created. And a lot of that had to do too with the game plan and not having Ricky Pearsall. When you don't have Ricky Pearsall out there and you don't have somebody who could consistently win one-on-ones, like Kendrick Bourne was playing Ricky Pearsall's spot. And there was like one we tried to target it. It was on 3rd down. We were running a stop and go comeback. It's a double or triple move really route, and Reek Woolen was all over Kendrick Bourne. And then the pressure's there, and you can't hold up. But we were consistently trying to have Kittle chip and release or keeping him into block, and McCaffrey check and release, keeping him into block. When you have those 2 guys who are your biggest space creators,
who are
being laid out into the pattern because they're trying to have to help. Like there was a 3rd down to Juwan Jennings where it looked like when he throws the pass and he catches it that he might be able to get there for a 1st down, and he would if Reek Woolen isn't there to come make the tackle. The reason Reek Woolen was there was because it was a 2-man concept on that side. Kittle's staying in to protect. or Kittle was a chip and release. So you have a 2-man concept to the other side, and then you have a 2-man concept to the to it was with Kendrick Bourne and Juwan Jennings, and they drop back on Kendrick Bourne, take away what would have been the first down throw, and you have a situation where if you can affect Reek Woolen, if McCaffrey can get out in the pattern, he's going to affect Reek Woolen. You create space for Juwan Jennings. Juwan goes and gets a first down. But Spencer Burford got beat by Byron Murphy right up the middle. And so Christian McCaffrey has to stay in and help on that and keep Brock from getting sacked. And so now you have no way to affect Reek Woolen, and where Juwan Jennings is catching it is in between two guys now, and they tackle him short. That's the kind of issues you're running into. And there was like when you are keeping two extra guys into either check and release and chip and release, or keeping one in a block, and you can't hold up for 4+ seconds, that's going to make it really hard on your passing game, because you're now asking three receivers to beat 5, 6, 7 defenders in pass coverage. And when you don't have an explosive element in there, now you can't stretch those zones as much, and so you just don't create space. I mean, there was a play. They came with a fire zone blitz. It was a 2 deep fire zone, and if Brock has time, he can check it down to Christian McCaffrey, who was on kind of a check and release out to the right. And McCaffrey's probably got a 20-yard gain, and it's on second down. But Spencer Burford got beat by a blitzing linebacker so bad it moved Brock to his left. Kittle is staying in the block, so we only have Juszczyk on a corner route, which is not an ideal thing. And they've got him bracketed on that side because it's 2 versus 1 over there. On the other side, you have 4 on 2. So you like, this is not ideal offense. And in theory, if you're going to do that, you should hold up long enough to where you can have those stretch the zones. Christian McCaffrey would have been open really well, but your left guard cannot hold up against an off-ball linebacker blitzing. You've accounted for everybody. This wasn't like he had to. It was okay. Well, the guy, by scheme, confused everything. No, they slid the protection the right way. They had the numbers to account for everything, and he didn't hold up. And you end up, Brock is forced to his left. Christian McCaffrey's out to his right. He tries to run up in there, and they end up sacking him for a 1-yard loss. It's on 2nd and 10. You should have a 20-yard gain. It's a 1-yard loss. Like, those things are really frustrating. Of like, okay, either you've got to put 5 out in the pattern, and it's got to be a quick passing game, which I felt like that would have been the better option. Or you're going to keep extra guys in. You need to hold up for a good amount of time, because it's going to take longer for things to develop, and they couldn't do that. It was like we were going to try and hold up more against these fire zones and everything that they do, and you just couldn't hold up versus their defensive line from what they were doing, and Brock was under pressure a lot.
So, what does that look like for Philly as far as Ricky? We've mentioned Ricky Pearsall 19 times. I mean, if he's not available, like,
If he's not available, I honestly have very little hope for this game. I'm going to dive into the Eagles' tape this week and see what's there. I think the only chances you really have is the defense has to figure something out here. There's got to be miracle recoveries by D Winters and something in that linebacker core. Eric Kendricks has got to suddenly become a resurgence and to what he was of yesteryear. Jalen Carter, you got to hope that he's not healthy, because if you look at that Philly front coming with Jalen Carter coming against our defensive line, and then they're going to sit in, and Fangio is going to sit there in a 7-man coverage. If they get home with 4 with that front, and you don't have Ricky Pearsall to stretch the field in any way, that's not good. Lisa's got a great question. Where is Jacob Cowan? He has not played a snap this season.
that is so wild. That's almost it's about as believable as the New York Jets not getting a single interception. That's equal crazy to me. Like,
And I think As far as I've been able to glean from what, like, Matt Barrows has been on this more than anybody, I think, and what he's kind of alluded to is that the 49ers, what they didn't want to do, it was coming down to roster space. They like Watkins enough that they don't want to stash him on the practice squad. But you've had so many injuries to wide receivers that it was like, okay, we need the guys that we've got in the building. Again, Kendrick Bourne had been showing he could be really productive. I don't think they felt
Yeah.
like they could put him on the practice squad. Somebody was going to, in need of a wide receiver, is going to claim him. So the way their roster was looking out, you were going to have to stash some receiver on a practice squad. And I don't think they wanted to do that with Jacob Cowing. So they've been trying to stash him on IR to hold him in reserve until they could figure out exactly where to go with this. But I don't know. Like, there just comes a point. I was supremely disappointed with Demarcus Robinson's performance in this game. It was off his landmarks, terrible in the run game. Um, just does not really lift this offense in any way. I don't, and Kyle is notorious for not wanting to play rookie wide receivers. There's just, at some point here, you've got to stretch the field. You've got to bring somebody with an explosive element, somebody that can take a catch and run for 60 yards because they have the speed to run away from people. Like, at some point, you need an explosive element from your receiving core. When Ricky Pearsall has been on the field, and we've seen that a couple times, that changes this offense completely. And I've been talking about it for years that the 49ers have needed that element. When they had it in 2023, when Brandon Ayuk was having a great year, the offense looked nearly unstoppable. I don't know what's going on with Jacob Cowing. I don't know if he tweaked his hamstring again. Supposedly, a couple months ago, he was on his fourth re-injury of that hamstring. But he said like a month ago that he was healthy. And it was just really coming down to the 49ers. What they didn't want to do is push somebody that was on the active roster to the practice squad to create space for Jacob Cowing, that person to get claimed off the practice squad, then somebody else in the receiver room get injured, and then be up a creek. Because because it's like Sky Moore, you can't put Sky Moore on the practice squad. Somebody's going to claim him, because he's a great returner. He's very valuable as a returner, hugely valuable as a returner. So there's Sky Moore. You got Kendrick Bourne. He's Ricky Pearsall's backup. You don't want him out of there. You got Jennings. He's been your most productive receiver. You don't want him out of there. You got Demarcus Robinson, who you brought in on a 3-year contract. You can't send him to the practice squad. You got then Jordan Watkins. Where else do you put him in there? Do you elevate? Do you put 6 receivers on the active roster with the state of the injuries to the linebacking core? You just start running out of roster spots, and then with the injuries up and downs of the offensive line and of defensive line, uh, you know, the state of the defense is one. What worries me most, you know, I had to sit there and go, wait, who is that? When you have to say that about our own players on defense who are playing the entire second half,
Yeah.
that's not good. Because I was like, who's 47? Or no, it was 49. I'm like, who's 49? And I had to look up, it was Garrett Wallow. Okay, Garrett Wallow was signed off waivers from the Broncos on December 6th. The guy has not even been with the team for a full month. And he was playing the entire second half at linebacker for in D Winters' spot as Will. Like,
Yeah.
what in the world? I
And
mean,
Kendricks
that
played.
that's cluster injuries at a position of, you got Fred Warner, Nick Martin, who isn't eligible to return from because they had to put him on IR because of the concussion. He was still having symptoms. That he's not eligible to return until the divisional round. D Winters, there is no way he's playing this weekend. They're gonna sit there and string us along just to try and have the benefit of forcing Philadelphia to do more homework. but the way that D Winters was stepped on, I don't think he's coming back. Maybe even this playoffs. I will be very surprised. So, D Winters is out. Tatum Bethune is dealing. He got hurt twice in that game. Didn't
Yeah.
finish the game. So it's going to be Eric Kendricks and Garrett Wallow, and then probably Curtis Robinson behind him. And after that, who knows what you do at linebacker?
Kittle.
So
That's what I said. I said
I
watching the
mean,
game, they might as well to
it's
intimidate and
just
hit
it's just
someone.
wild. Like, um, yeah, Nick Martin was on for a concussion. He got a concussion in November. 3 weeks later, was still showing symptoms of that concussion, and so they shut him down, put him on IR. So he has to miss 4 games this week. This weekend is the fourth game. And it's just it's man, it's bad.
So to add to this, Johnny, because the NFL has 2 head coaching vacancies, that is a little nerve-wracking. Um, you know, what what are your thoughts with what happened this morning, last night with the vacancies?
So, one surprising non-vacancy is the Bengals have kept Zach Taylor. So he's still there as head coach. With the debacle that was this season, and what's happened with that team the last 2 years, I really did not think he was going to be retained, but he's still there. But the Falcons kind of surprisingly, I mean,
Yeah.
with the way that the bank, if you said the Bengals or Falcons, who's moving on from their head coach over the way the last month of the season is gone, I would say the Bengals would move on from Zach Taylor before the Falcons would move on from Raheem Morris, especially considering that uh who is still their now main shot caller in or no, he got let go. Sorry, I was trying to keep up with everything. Anyways, with Penix going down to the torn ACL, you would think that there would be some grace for Raheem Morris there, and especially with them beating LA and then beating the Saints last game of the year. But Raheem Morris is out. That's a head coaching vacancy. I do wonder if the defensive performance over the last month of the year has kind of soured some people on Robert Saleh as a head coaching candidate. Middle of the season, everybody's talking about him. I think right
Right.
now, the names that are really going around there are Matt Nagy, are Vance Joseph, Kevin Stefanski, who was just let go from the Browns, makes a lot of sense in Atlanta.
Yeah.
He has a West Coast roots background, coming up under Brad Childress, and runs a system very similar to Kyle's. And by all reports, Matt Ryan's going to be moving into a position to oversee that head coaching search. It would make a lot of sense for him to go after a guy like Stefanski to try and uh, build around Penix, and going forward. So, um, I think that's an interesting one. But the Browns situation, if I'm Saleh, I stay away from the Browns. I mean, they're a dumpster fire of a situation. Their defense is very attractive because they have so much talent there, but their offense has so many issues. And you have such an issue with being absolutely saddled by Deshaun Watson's contract and having him on the team and the cluster that is the quarterback room there. If I'm Saleh, I stay as far away from the Browns as possible. But what does become interesting is that Jim Schwartz most likely now is going to be going through a coaching change there, and if he doesn't want to work with whoever they bring in, he is free to go. The Browns most likely would honor that and say, we will let you out of your contract, and there's a mutual parting of ways, and Jim Schwartz can go find work wherever he wants to. He would be one of the most in demand defensive coordinators immediately, coming out onto the circuit. It's him and Raheem Morris, and probably Jeff Ulbrich are going to be the 3 guys that would really be available out there. If it's the 49ers, if Saleh was to move on, I think the 3 best options, one is in-house Gus Bradley. I think that's your second best option. I think Jeff Ulbrich is your third best option, because those guys bring scheme continuity. They understand everything, and that's one thing that you really want. You've built a roster around a certain way of running scheme, but the number one guy is going to be Jim Schwartz to me. If Robert Saleh for some reason moves on, the tricky part about this is how does the timing work out? It feels like the longer you go in the playoffs, the more likely it is that you retain Saleh because of the way that coaching hiring cycles work.
Yeah.
But if you're going to lose Saleh, you'd rather lose him earlier and be able to start talking to Jim Schwartz because he's going to be a big time target. And I think Jim Schwartz makes. I would love Jim Schwartz as our defense corner if it's not Saleh. I think those two guys are two of the better defensive minds in the league. And Jim Schwartz has been a top defensive coordinator for a long time. And I don't think he's going to get another head coaching look. I just don't. Like the way it's gone, it seems like if he was going to get another look, it would have come already. And we've been looking for who is the defensive guru that you can pair with Kyle Shanahan who will be here for the next 10 years. That's what you want because that's what Andy Reid has gotten. And we've wanted that. So that's just that. I think that's where it impacts the 49ers.
Yeah, I know you got to get out of here. You got a
Yeah.
work thing to get to. I want to remind the faithful to support Johnny. The best way to do that is to take your phone, show it to someone, show the channel, hop on the website, consider becoming a member as well. We are all licking our wounds, but got to stay faithful, got to get rid of the black unis, and we will look to come to you on Friday and unless the world ends before that, which sometimes it feels like that. So in the meantime, stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, go Niners.